All right. So we just want to, you can please continue letting us know where you're coming from into the chat. We love reading that. I just love seeing where everybody's from. I think it's so amazing. And I also want to welcome not only Evelyn Moon, but also Sarah King, who is going to take us through a wonderful, wonderful community webinar that we have for you guys today. But before she goes, I just want to give you some brief information about Sarah. She has a background in social work, and she has served for over 18 years in nonprofit organizations supporting at-risk youth, adults transitioning out of poverty, and families with seriously ill children. In addition, she's trained and supported thousands of adults while volunteering in their communities, which is awesome. As a speaker, healing arts practitioner, and swim instructor, Sarah really equips helping professionals to go from overwhelmed to well-being through movement, mindfulness, and discovering and engaging their own creativity. She likes to unwind, doing all things DIY, don't we all, right? And volleyball and spending some time with her friends, family, and rambunctious dog, Kobe Jack. And she loves anything around eating. She is a presenter after my own heart.
Yes, thank you for that. Also wanted to introduce Good Grief. I think most of you know who we are, but we are here in Morristown and in Princeton, New Jersey, providing completely free and unlimited grief peer support programming to children ages 3 through 30. So we do have young adults. Young adult is our only group that's virtual. So if you've got some 18 to 30-year-olds who might need some support after the death of a parent, caregiver, or sibling, we are here for them. But these webinars are really part of us reaching out beyond our centers. We work with schools, hospitals, healthcare settings, funeral homes, other nonprofits, but we just want to spread information, advocacy, and learning to our community and to yours. So I just want to say anyone who attends this will receive a certificate of attendance, most likely tomorrow. So by the end of the week, you should be hearing from us again. You'll also receive a recording of this session early next week as well. So we are just so glad to have you all here. I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to turn it over to our presenter.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to join you today. Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Annette, for the invitation. Here comes my slides as well. Actually, one more time, I'm going to make sure I get the audio so that we can create together today with a little soundtrack. Okay. So as they said, my name is Sarah King, and I recognize that grief is heavy, complex, and can show up and be approached from all different ways. And it shows up for each of us in our own way. As a healing arts practitioner and a fellow grief sojourner, I'm passionate about supporting our mental health and well-being as we travel our unique paths through the wilderness of grief. It's my honor to equip us today to discover and engage our creativity as a tool for our healing journeys. So if you have not already grabbed your supplies, these are the things that we'll be creating with today. So some paper, something to write with. Optionally, if you want to add in some colored pens, that's great. And by the way, this is my hand. Hello. So this is my demonstration window. So you'll know whose hand that is. So I'll be demonstrating there. And I also recognize that creating can be a little bit intimidating for some folks if you don't consider yourself artistic. So I want you to know that all of the prompts that we'll be doing today and something I call vision journaling are designed for non-artists. So if that's you, don't worry. If you are an artist, take these and run with them. Okay, approach it at whichever place you're comfortable with. So, and that being said, if you are in a mental space or a physical space to actually create hands-on with us today, I'm still glad you're here. You can serve today to be present as what some people call an owl, an observer, a witness, a listener. So here's what we have in store. I'm going to give you some context, and then we'll be doing different art and writing prompts. And while we do that, I'll have some, time for us to actually do them right now as a break in the middle of your day, perhaps. And so we'll go back and forth between creating and explaining what to do and giving some little commercial breaks during the time as far as just why we might be doing what we're doing. So one question I have for everyone as we kind of get settled into today, My mom, and you might have heard other people say this, but my mom told me one time, grief is like the weather. Okay. It's always there, but sometimes it's more noticeable than others. So my question for you today is, how is your grief weather today? How is your grief weather today? If you were putting your grief into weather terms, are you in a hurricane? Is it bright and sunny? Maybe you're recovering from a storm. The sun's coming back out again. How would you describe your grief weather? So please share that in the chat as we get going so we can kind of get a sense of where we're at today. What is it like for you? And by the way, when I'm saying grief and loss, this could be your own personal, or it could also be things that you're witnessing. I know a lot of you work with others who are in the midst of grief. And of course, in our world, there's plenty of things to grieve about. Thank you for these. Clouds are thinning, Robin. Nice. Mellow like the cool wind. Sunny with a chance of light rain. Stormy. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for considering this. Yeah, it absolutely depends on the day, right, Randall? Absolutely. Demita, hello. My weather, cloudy and goes back and forth in the major storm, heavy rain, light rain. Yeah. I used to live in Houston, Texas. I am currently in Miami, Florida. In Houston, Texas, we used to say that we could get all 4 seasons in one day at some times. I'm sure a lot of you all where you are is like that too. Here, it's more so sunny physically, but with this grief situation, it could all of a sudden be a tornado, cloudy with a chance of meatballs. Yes, exactly. Exactly. It can sneak up on us, as we know, right? So that being said, if you are in the midst of a hurricane, I want safety first. Okay, so safety first. So let's approach grief and loss are always hard things to talk about, feel, and experience. So sometimes I know for me, I would have rather avoided it altogether. I tried for several years to avoid it altogether. So I applaud your courage for coming today. Just being here, just showing up, it takes courage. As one of my friends said to me after a major loss, he was like, you got to get that beep out. It's just like, you got to express, right? But how? How do we experience the waves of emotion that grief and loss can bring without drowning? So today's workshop, I'm going to be doing some hands-on approaches with you all that can aid in your journey. But I also, of course, want you to use whatever resources are available to you, such as Good Grief and all the amazing programming that you all have. Maybe you have access to an EAP. Maybe you want to go to professional counseling. Definitely, if you need the suicide hotline number at any point, please take note of that. I want you to be safe in the storm, okay? Today, what we're going to be doing is using healing arts, or expressive arts as it's sometimes called. And research shows that actually any form of expressing using creativity, that might be cooking, it might be dancing, singing, drumming, all of that is helpful when we're experiencing negative emotions as a way to get them out and express them rather than holding and repressing. So, some intentions. So the research supporting healing arts teaches that we experience these mental health benefits, releasing stress and anxiety and allowing time and space for emotions to surface and be expressed through the process. So it's actually not the final product. So if you don't end up liking what you create today, just recycle it. No big deal. The important thing is that we're engaging in some way with the process. So I won't be grading your work today, and I invite you not to grade your work either. I'm going to say that again because I know with art, please don't grade your work. Okay, I invite you not to grade your work today. Sometimes it can be tempting to. The most important conversation we'll have with ourselves is with ourselves. However, I will create space to ask you some things to share in the chat as we go. Of course, that is optional. So we're going to begin by just doing a little warm up to be present, to breathe, and we'll do that through a prompt I call Waves of Breath. So I'm in Florida, so I'm bringing in a little bit of the ocean for you all, a little bit of the beach, because I live relatively close to it. So sometimes all we can do is breathe, right? All we can do is breathe sometimes when we're in the midst of loss, whether leading up to it or in the aftermath. And even that can feel difficult. So to help us find our breath, we're going to engage our hands. And we'll bring you to the ocean, don't worry. So this drawing is meant to be slow. So as you slowly draw up the wave, and I'll demonstrate here on the paper. So as you draw a wave, you're going to go up slowly while you inhale, hold for a couple beats, and then exhale as you draw it down. So we're engaging both the breath and our hands at the same time. So I'm going to play us some wave music so we can take you to the beach. And so you're just going to repeat, all right, until your page gets full. So you can switch colors, or you can keep the same color while you do it. So we'll just take about 1 minute, excuse me, to breathe and to draw some waves. So I will get some music for us, some waves in the background. Let's go ahead and do that. Now feel free to continue drawing waves, to continue to outline those. I'm going to share a little bit of my story, but while I'm doing it, feel free to keep drawing if you're enjoying that. So for some context of kind of how I came to be here, I have always been creative. I've always enjoyed making things, DIY, as Annette mentioned. But when I couldn't find a university program that would let me major in arts and crafts, I ended up, I would have had to go fine art or graphic design route. So I ended up pursuing another love, which is helping others. So I ended up studying social work and pursuing, working in charitable organizations, nonprofit organizations. Unfortunately, in my mid to late 20s, after I had already kind of started working in the field, I had several family members, as well as a teen girl that I mentored, who was like a little sister to me. They all died over the span of a few years. So from cancer, suicide, and heart disease. So despite having studied social work, and helping others go through things, I did not know how to help myself. I didn't know how to express or share these emotions. I didn't know what to do with them. My family growing up, we spoke fluent sarcasm. Let me know if that sounds familiar, but we did not know how to share feelings. I didn't feel comfortable expressing myself to many people around me. So at first, I just shoved them all under the rug, as we do, right? I tried, but unfortunately, as the losses and the grief piled up, I was still trying to show up to serve every day in the nonprofit, also volunteer on top of that for youth stuff, and trying to show up at my best the way that I would have before. And I found that I just didn't have the energy anymore. I wasn't able to show up. It started affecting my work and certainly the things that I was trying to do outside of work as well. So let me know with the R in the chat if any of this is resonating with you so far. My first niece happened to be born about 1 month after my cousin took his life. And I was so excited for new life, honestly. When it was my first niece, that was always exciting. But definitely at this point, he was the fourth family member that I had lost in the recent years. So I was like, let's go, let's get into the positive. So I might have been a little extra and decided to start a baby clothing line to celebrate. So I started sewing because, again, creativity is an outlet. It's one of the few that I knew. But I was doing it out of excitement for my niece. What I didn't realize that it would also provide me with so many gifts, because the hours that I spent hand sewing, I would break down the neckties into these little bow ties and neckties. That time when I was sitting there sewing ended up being enough peace that I could slowly start processing my emotions. I could slowly start feeling them and acknowledging them. It became a safe space for me to start that process. Eventually, I did go to counseling. Knowing that I was artistic, my counselor suggested drawing in a journal. And I was like, oh, that's a better approach, because I had just been doing it kind of like a diary. And I felt like my story did not tie up with a bow. So I didn't know how to write this story. I didn't know how to write in a journal, really. But I knew how to draw. And so she suggested that. And so this was a page, for example, that I drew as I was reading a book about grief being a wilderness. And this was my impression that day of how I felt in the wilderness of grief. And I realized that by approaching it a different way, it opened up another outlet for me, another door. So today the project we're doing is kind of stemmed from this season of life when I started investigating what are some other ways I could journal rather than write. Now we're going to be doing a combination of writing and drawing. And like I said, you can approach it from whatever level you would like to. But I have since learned from that self-expression, emotional processing, stress relief, it's actually not a phenomenon that's only available to me. Actually, it's a whole thing. So the project, like I said, we're doing is a part of healing arts. That's actually what that's called. I figured drawing might be a little easier than hand sewing for all of us today, but I also recommend that. So in the grief and loss in our lives, coupled with what we witness around the world and in our work, I often experience being at a loss of words. Like, I don't even know how to describe these feelings or put it into words. So in these moments, creativity for me has help the words find me. So this is a practice called blackout poetry that I learned about through an artist and an author named Austin Kleon, if you've heard of him. He uses newspapers and magazines, articles, just any kind of found text, and will black out the parts that don't resonate with him and make the parts that do visible. So yeah, it's perfect, Jennifer. Thank you for sharing. So as a way to start, I thought we could let some words find us today. So on your screen, we have some screen. I tried to make these as big as I could so we could read them. So apologies if it's a little blurry. But this is a Nancy Drew book, an old book page, okay? And it starts on the left, continues to the right. Here's my invitation to you, is to slowly read through this with looking for or sensing for whatever words or phrase stand out to you. It does not have to make any sense, but what we're going to do is just jot down those words and it will create a poem for you. So this it doesn't have to be a super strict form of poetry, right? Things don't have to rhyme. It can be prose. If you want to do a haiku, whatever works for you, but simply writing down any words or phrases that stand out to you on the screen. So I always love doing this because it's so interesting how different ones will stand out to most of us. So as we go, I'm going to give us some time to do this independently, and then I would be happy to read what you come up with. I'll invite you to share in the chat if you would like to as we go. So let's take some time first independently. And remember, I am not grading this. There is no pressure. as far as what you choose. So words or phrases that stand out to you. And this can be on a new page, or you can write it in your waves if you would like. I'm going to go ahead and show you one more page as well if you want to add to what you already did. So I'll proceed to the next one. And after this, I'll ask if anyone wants to start typing out what you wrote. Feel free. I invite you at this time, and thank you, Taisha, for starting it as well. I love that. If anyone else wants to share the poem that you created, please do so in the chat as I give us another about 45 seconds to a minute of doing this. Thank you, Tiffany. These are great. Thank you all for sharing. I'm still reading them. Jennifer, shaking hands with imaginary passengers. Gina, my story belongs to a full moon. I love seeing how we are using the same words and they're all coming out differently. This is so beautiful. Danny, she is not unhappy. As a matter of fact, she is happier. Go ask. Wow. Wonderful. Thank you, Akarim. Thank you, Annette. Ashley, thank you for chiming in. Show you. Beautiful. Thank you all for participating with that. The beauty of this prompt is it can be done with anything. So anything that you have laying around, if you physically do it, you can also do it by the way Austin Kleon does this, circle the words and then black out the rest, and it ends up looking pretty neat, kind of like a redacted document. Or you can even make a design kind of around the words if it's something that you can write on. This is great. Thank you, Sherry. All right, feel free to continue to drop those in. I'm going to share a little bit of science behind some creativity. This is a quote from Abby Embry, who's a chaplain at the Hospice House of Williamsburg. She said, when we experience an emotional trauma or crisis, our body feels this, even if our minds do not notice these sensations right away. The power of the mind can even hold off feelings of grief in your body for a long time as you try to survive through the first days and weeks of grief. It's something to be thankful for in a way, but to also acknowledge that at some point we have to start to feel into your body again to take care of yourself. But reconnecting with your body can be scary, right? How do we even wrap our minds around such an abstract question as, how is our body responding to grief? So I will say that this next prompt is just meant to be a tool in recognizing how is our body reacting to grief? Where are we storing it, perhaps? What physical sensations are we experiencing? And then, as Abby encourages, once you identify the places in your body where you feel the grief, you can find the creative ways to kind of start moving it out, just moving it around rather than hold in order to express. Oh, thank you, Donna. Thank you for commenting. So we can find, again, this might be walking, it might be stretching, it might be drawing, doodling, sewing, anything, doing hair, doing your kids' hair, whatever it is, to move it around. So I would encourage you to draw a simple stick figure. This one is a little, maybe 3 steps higher than simple on my screen, but feel free to do the traditional circle, stick, lines if that is the best place for you to approach it. All good, okay? A simple figure. And then I would invite you to assess where and how have you been feeling grief or loss or the effect of it in your body. One way to do this is just think, kind of go down head to toe and observe. Are your shoulders tight? Okay, then maybe we want to color in the shoulders. Has your stomach been kind of in knots? I know I feel that. I'm like a gut person, so a lot of times my gut will tell me if I how I am feeling. I might not know the words for it, but I know something's going on because I can feel tightness or soreness or like butterflies, something like that. So in the areas of your body, you can actually either depict it, like scribble, or write how you're feeling, maybe point some arrows to some different places, just as a measure of self-assessment. How have you been feeling this? So again, I'll play us some music as we consider, how are we feeling physically? How does grief feel in your body? Now, as you've identified some places that maybe you're starting to feel grief, or maybe you don't know if it's grief, but you're feeling something, if there is anything that in the most immediate sense we could do to kind of start moving it, maybe it's a slow roll of your shoulders, maybe it's a little massage, or even breathing into that space. Taking a breath and like directing it in your mind to that space in your body and then releasing can be a good practice that we can do throughout the day. Throughout at any point, we can give some love, right, to those areas where we're feeling those things. Now, I want to also invite us, we looked at the physical with that prompt. Now this is our time to look a little bit more inward as far as our thoughts and our feelings, okay? So what I'll do is guide you through a short visualization, and then I'll have us draw something to kind of depict what we saw, okay? So in this visualization, I would invite you to just, be comfortable wherever you are. I would encourage you to look at something that's not moving. If you're at a place where you can close your eyes physically, that's great. If you can, if you can't, don't worry. Just kind of rest your eyes and look at something that's stable. Let's take a couple of breaths just to set up. Okay, so now I would ask you to imagine that you are walking through a park. And up ahead of you, you see a stream, some sort of river or stream. What does it look like? What does it sound like? Just kind of take a look around in your mind's eye. What do you hear? What do you see? Now, as you walk toward it, you see that in the ground right before the stream, there's some very soft grass. And you know what? It seems like it would be good to take your shoes off. So if you are someone that would take your shoes off outside, I invite you to imagine that. If not, that's fine. So once you take your shoes off, feel the lush grass beneath your feet. Let's go ahead and slowly sit down where you can see the stream or the river. And as you rest your hands on your lap, you start watching the river. You watch as the water comes from up the stream and flows down the stream. You listen as the water runs into some rocks and some edges, and you just sit and observe the water for a few moments. As you watch the river in front of you, you start to notice that there are some words floating in the river. And as you look a little closer, you notice that those are emotions that have been coming through your heart or through your head. You recognize those emotions that are floating through the river. You take a look at one as it comes towards you. It flows slowly by, and then you watch it as it floats away. Then you look upstream again and you see another emotion that you've been experiencing. And you watch it, it bumps into a rock, it kind of moves to the left, and then it keeps going. So on this page, we're going to set up a river. And I want you to write down some emotions that you might see if your heart had a river through it. If your heart had a river through it. Michael Singer in his book says, I am the one who sees. From back in here somewhere, I look out and I am aware of the events, thoughts, and emotions that pass before me. I'm the one that's witnessing that. So each of us are witnessing our thoughts and our feelings. So this exercise can be helpful to see what they are, while at the same time, we're not in the river under those emotions. It can be helpful and empowering to imagine as if we're step back, just one step, so we can see the emotions. So naming them is an empowering position, because what we're saying is, I see it and I'm letting it pass. I'm seeing it and I'm letting it pass. So one way to visually depict this, and if you have your own idea, go for it. I'll show you one example of how you might depict this. So you're going to find some space on your paper. And as you can see, the squiggly lines on the screen, that's going to represent our river. I did leave now, and I will say I left a little space, as you see, about 2/3 of the way up the river. That's an option, because I'll go ahead and show you the next steps on the screen. If you like that image, then that's why I kept the space. If you would rather not have the heart around it, then you can just make a river with squiggly lines. Okay, so let's see, setting up my river, I'll put a few squiggles. A little space about 1 centimeter wide, and continue those squiggles. So my river is going diagonally across my page. If you'd like to add the heart piece, the way I did that was, first I put a little dot just to the left of my river and a dot on the bottom of my river. One here and one here. And then I used those dots to have something to aim for, to connect the right side of the heart through the river. Next, about a little bit up, same thing. I did one more dot and I connected the top edges to the bottom. And then the left side of the heart is going to be, it's going to go behind the river. So you don't need to actually draw through it. It's just going to go right behind. And if your heart looks a little wonky, maybe that is the best depiction of how your heart feels right now. I'm going to let mine be a little bit lopsided. And color it in if you would like to. If you're working with pen, you can just kind of go like this. Give it a little shade. And then my invitation for you to fill the river is going to be with those words of emotions that you may have seen floating in the river, or you can imagine seeing if you were looking at your heart. So I'm going to put some word banks up, a word bank up with just some ideas. This is not a all inclusive list. Anything that you're feeling is valid. So as we discussed, it allows you to see it, witness it, and imagine it floating by you on the river. Oh, you cannot see the demonstration? Interesting. I wonder, let me back up one slide. Can you see the slide, Esther? That is essentially what I drew on my demonstration. It might be the view on the particular Zoom. I'm not sure if you can see that, but these pictures are the same thing. So I'll show this for about 10-20 seconds more, and then I'll toggle between this and the word bank in case anyone needs the word bank as we work. Okay, perfect. You can see the slide. Okay, great. If you're finished and you'd like to share any of the words that came to mind for you or how that experience was for you, feel free in the chat. I'll leave the words up here some more in case you needed those. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you so much for taking a look inward. So this practice is not necessarily, of course, a final, like, oh, and that if we return back to this practice as much as we need to, it can help empower us a bit to step back and look rather than feeling like we are drowning in the waves of the river. So by taking that step, looking at them, naming them, and then letting them pass you by, just even imagining that can be a helpful step. Now, in the midst of all of this, like I said, it is easy to feel, and I know I have felt like completely overwhelmed by all of this. So if you ever feel like you are just like swirling, like I fell in the river, like the waves are over, it might be helpful to have a practice as well that brings us back to right now, right here, the present. So one way to do this, I'm sure many of you already know this, but is to use our senses as a way to get back present. Because of course, like our minds can travel, right? We can travel all over the place. So to bring us back to present, if you ever need it, here's one simple activity. Sorry, I'm switching up the order a little bit. Let me do this. To get back present would be this one, to sense the present. So what you would do, here it comes, is you can trace your hand if you would like to, or draw any simple picture that has 5 pieces for the 5 senses. Okay, and I have them listed here on the screen. So we can set up by either tracing your hand or drawing perhaps a flower with 5 petals. Maybe it's a mountain range with 5 mountains, a tree with 5 branches, anything like that. So for today, I think I'll just draw a little hand. If you want to trace yours, that's fine. And then each part is going to represent a sense. And so we'll move through the list, starting with, and again, this is to bring you back present in case you feel like, okay, I am swirling over here. I am all over the place. This is to get present. Observe what you see right now, right here. We are looking at the computer screen. You can see your notebook, your keyboard, anything to get present. So I would invite you to then, after you set up your page, to write in that digit or that petal, what do you see? And then moving on to what do you touch? How do things physically feel around you right now? And go through each sense. This can be helpful too in case you're having some sort of like a flashback, to bring you out of it and to bring you back using our 5 senses. This I learned from a counselor named Terry Samuels. She suggests even creating a list of the senses that you enjoy and then engaging with them to help you connect with the present moment. So to have some in your toolbox too. Maybe it's a really soft blanket that you can go back to and feel anytime you're feeling like overwhelmed or like you're stuck in your memories. So let's take a moment and just go through see, touch, taste, hear, and smell. This is talking about right now, right here. Thank you, Tessa. That's beautiful. All right, since we have about 4 minutes left, I want to do one more with you, and you can also take this as your to-go bag as well. And a question I have for you to consider is this. Oops. What would it look like to give compassion on the parts of you that are the most hurt, sad, disappointed? This was asked by a friend of mine named Tia Norman after a loss that I had experienced. She asked me this, and it really helped me consider that and start to do that. So, what would it look like to give compassion on the parts of you that are the most hurt, disappointed, or sad? What would it look like? So, let's take a couple of moments just to jot down some ideas in your journal. And maybe this is something that you want to add to your river drawing, or you can do it on a fresh page. Now let's take just a couple moments to do that as we wrap up today. What would it look like to give compassion on the parts of you that are the most sad, disappointed, or hurt? Thank you, Anne. Anne said, my honest answer to this last prompt is, I don't know. That's fair. That's fair. So I would encourage you to stay open to learning what that looks like for you. That was the next piece of advice that Tia gave me. She said, stay open. It is tempting to close up when we're hurt. It's so tempting. So let's stay open today. Thank you all. Yep, same thing, Rachel. No worries. Stay open. You're welcome. You're welcome. And I thank you all for having me today. I'll go ahead and put up some information of how we can stay in touch if you would ever like to. And thank you once again, Evelyn and Annette. My hope for each of you is that you continue to feel supported in many ways as you navigate the grief journey, one step, one scribble, or one breath at a time.
Thank you so much. I put this in the chat, but it likely just went rolling along. There is a survey. It will also be included in the follow-up. We want to know what your experience was. We also have our final 3 for this program year webinars. Next month, we will have one Songs of Solace, which is about music therapy and grief. We will have Managing Grief on Parent Holidays coming in May. And in June, As We Carry On, which is narrative writing and journaling. So we are really looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Sarah. This was wonderful. I enjoyed participating. I feel like I learned so much. Annette, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I just want to add, it was just amazing. It really was. And from what I'm reading in the chat, everyone really connected and resonated with all parts of what you were sharing today. So we're incredibly grateful to have this opportunity with you.
Thank you for the opportunity, you all, and good job on being here and creating in whatever way you did. Thank you so much, you all.
Hey, thank you.
And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.